Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Whether you're just waking up or winding down your day, we're so excited to have you here with us today for the Millennium Fellowship Talk. I'm Gia Pope, your moderator for the day and the campus director at University of Mumbai, tuning in live from India. It's fantastic to see our participants number growing, and it's so good to see some familiar names from the previous sessions as well. Thank you all for being here today. Before we dive into our main session, we're just waiting for our speaker to join us in a few minutes. I would love for everyone to introduce themselves in the chat box. Share your name, your university, where you're joining us from. Tell us a little about your project. We'd love to hear that. And if anyone's feeling comfortable enough to speak right now, please feel free to use the raise hand feature, and we'd love to unmute you and hear from you live. I think we have someone ready to speak to us already. Hello, Joseph.
Hello, are you getting me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, I'm Joseph Pili from Zambia, currently at the United States International University, Kenya. My project focuses on menstrual health among young girls. This program, I thought about this project because a lot of girls in my village, they don't go to school because of lack of sanitary projects, and this is why I'm trying by all means to have a campaign in December, every December. Yeah, thanks.
Would you like to go next?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
So my name is Deborah, and I'm originally from Burundi, but then now I live in Kenya. And my project is basically about where like I believe like the SDG about education and poverty, there is a very huge intersection. So my project is like, how do we meet them, like both of them? So my project is to take some few students in the place where I live and to just like encourage them and providing one meal every week. I think it's very encouraging to see that there is someone who is thinking that they can do what we think that we've done so far, like being in university. For some of them, it's like a dream, like a very big one. Not like this, you are just going to university, but it's like a very big dream. So just like to inspire them and to be like, you can do this, I did it, so you can do it. Yeah. And I'm from USIU, Africa in Kenya, Nairobi.
Again, that's an incredible project. It's so nice to hear about what everyone's working on. I think it just helps us connect and learn from each other and take our projects forward together. And thank you so much for sharing. I believe Alina would like to go next.
Hi everyone, my name is Ilana. I'm a senior at Vanderbilt University, which is in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm from New York City. And my project focuses on this idea of unity and American dialogue. So thinking about really difficult conversations in the US. I'm part of different clubs on campus. I'm part of the Interfaith Scholars Program, as well as the Vanderbilt Project on Unity and American Democracy with Dialogue Vanderbilt. So I'm working to look at the different conversations that we have at different events and think about how this really transforms us with dialogue and the power of investing in these relationships. So very happy to be here. I'm so happy to be a Millennium Fellow and excited.
That's amazing. It was so nice hearing from you. And I'm so sorry about pronouncing your name wrong. I feel like there's going to be a little bit of that throughout the session, but it sounds incredible. I think I can go over to the chat box now and read a few introductions out from there and come back to everyone who's raised their hands. Wow, we've got a lot of people over here, and it's so nice to see a few people from my cohort here as well. We've got people from all over. Wow. got people from Nigeria. It's so nice to see all these wonderful introductions. I believe Vaishnavi Verma has raised her hand. Would you like to go next, Vaishnavi?
Hi, so can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. So, hi everyone, this is Vaishnavi here. So, just a quick update about my project. My project is actually going on the SDG 13, which is an organization coming up with the name Climate Cadets Collective. So, the quick update for all of you is that we are going to host our very first session. And there are 3 sessions lined up in this month itself. So, it's an organization working in the field of climate research, community engagement. So right now, the first session is by an economist and environmentalist, and the other two are also from based on legislative assessment for climate advocacy. And also, if you all are interested, just go and check out the LinkedIn and just come up with it. I think I'll share in the Discord as well. That's a big deal because all the three people are really well versed in this field. Two of them are actually the member of parliaments in India itself. One is the deputy leader of Congress, and the other is also an MP itself. So we're actually working in this is the beginning. That's going to be the very first project in this Millennium Fellowship for my. So that's how it is. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vaishnavi. And thank you so much for everyone who introduced themselves live and everyone who's introducing themselves in the chat box. Please keep that going. I would like to shift our attention to now what promises to be a very inspiring session. We have our speaker here, Daniela Kon.
Hello, everyone. How's my
Hi,
audio?
Dan.
Hear me?
Loud and clear.
Wonderful.
I would just like to introduce Daniela before we move on to our session. Daniela is the founder and executive director of Sima Academy. She is a German, Los Angeles-based media executive, educator, and veteran impact producer whose career driving social change initiatives spans over 2 decades. She is the founder and executive director of Social Impact Media Awards, Sima, a global award program recognizing excellence in non-fiction storytelling, and Sima Studios, a non-profit media agency that has established a new paradigm for the distribution and impact of documentaries worldwide. With a strategic focus on responsible impact through creativity, Sima's year-round cinema across borders series and educational streaming platform, Sima Academy, brings social impact films to communities and classrooms in over 100 countries. Daniela's early career working in the human rights and international development sectors across Southeast Asia, West Africa, and the Middle East nurtured her expertise and conviction in the transformative power of storytelling, particularly where education and high impact community engagement meet. Thank you so much, Daniela, for taking the time to speak to us today. We're really excited to listen to what you have to say, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Gia. It's really a pleasure to be here today and to learn about your project, and hopefully in the Q&A, I'll have the opportunity to speak to some of you directly and learn even more. I think it might be useful to, I see there are some people in the waiting room. Gia, I would assume you're letting everyone in who's still waiting to join. I think maybe I'll start just telling you a little bit about how I got here and how I got to do what I do today. As Gia mentioned, I used to work in the international development sector. I was a filmmaker making films for humanitarian and human rights organizations between Southeast Asia and West Africa for about 10 years. And during that time, I got very concerned with the storytelling that we were commissioned to do. It was very much about givers and receivers and heroes versus victims. And here are the most resilient, amazing people I'd ever met. But the stories I was supposed to tell were basically just robbing them of their dignity and making them into subjects of poverty so that international donor communities could empathize, that we could play on their heartstrings, and they can throw money at a problem that they didn't really understand. And certainly we didn't, and our storytelling didn't help them understand. That was concerning, especially seeing and staying in various countries. I worked in Cambodia for a long time, in Liberia and Senegal, seeing the changes that we were certainly telling stories and making films about, and pretending that were happening, that weren't happening, and some of them that actually ended up being quite detrimental for local communities. So the storytelling was a big issue. And the other was, we're talking early 2000s, is during that time, this was pre-social media, Facebook, Twitter came around 2004, 2007, the distribution avenues for the kind of stories that actually celebrated people's resilience, that were actually useful to inspire communities to take up the local issues and find common ground and find local solutions. The distribution avenues for these stories didn't really exist beyond the International Film Festival circuit. And I always choose the same example, is that, here you had a film about domestic abuse of women in northern India that was screening at a film festival in Canada. But how did that help women in northern India? And so with that in mind, this duality between the storytelling and the distribution, I felt that had to change. And I started working in the beginning in Liberia with local community groups, and in Senegal, making films with local communities, screening them in local communities, using film as an excuse to gather communities together so that we can have a forum and a platform for conversation where we can build coalition around the issues. As you probably know, a lot of the times you'll find a lot of organizations and people that are working on the same issues that have never spoken to each other. So how can we create a forum where we can actually have an optimization for collaboration? And long story short, it was working. In 2012, I'm going to make my kind of CV a little bit shorter. In 2012, I had a horse riding accident. I fell from a horse in Jamaica and fractured my knee and couldn't continue working in the field making these films. So I decided if I can't continue making them, the films have to come to me, and I have to figure out how to distribute them in a way that they can have optimum impact. So I started Sima, which was the acronym of the Social Impact Media Awards, told everyone I'd ever worked with, we're going to change the face of social impact storytelling and distribution. And in the first year, had about 500 submissions. Now, 13 years later, we have a network of 3,500 filmmakers in 140 countries that submit their work to us. And we select about 30 titles a year that stand out in their integrity, in their transparency, in their creativity and educational merit, that we plug into 2 distribution programs. One is a community screening program, a traveling series, Cinema Across Borders, where we partner with local community activists, local community organizers, international film festivals, and local human rights organizations to screen the films about the issues that are relevant for the community at that time. And our other program is Sima Academy, our education platform that has sometimes been called the Netflix for Changemakers, where we curate all of the short format documentaries that come through Sima and make them available to leadership networks, to educational forum and educational institutions around the world. So happy that we're partnering with the Millennium Campus Network, and all of you have access to Sima Academy, our vast repository of stories from around the world. I'm going to add the link and access code in a minute into the chat box so that you can all register and have access to these stories. I'm always getting asked, why is storytelling? What's important about it? And I think we can all agree that in the time that we live in, media and story, I guess from the beginnings of humanity, storytelling has been one of the most important factors in how we perceive the world, how we perceive each other. And the mainstream and social media landscape that has been developing over the last few years, that has been fueled with fake and fabricated and AI-generated storytelling, seems to suggest that there can only be right and wrong, and there can only be one truth, And anyone who has access to a smartphone or a mobile phone can be a filmmaker and a journalist, and whatever story they want to tell and what they might personally perceive as the truth can go relatively unchallenged in terms of the way that our social media and media distribution platforms are accessible, and the journalistic integrity and media literacy that is required to navigate this space hasn't quite proportionally lived up in the education space. I wonder if any of you have had a subject that is called media literacy in elementary, middle school, high school, or even coming into college level, where we're more and more exposed to a lot of messaging and a lot of media messaging and storytelling, but our skill in terms of deciphering the agenda behind certain messaging, and also how messaging is simplified to create a story that has a duality, that is newsworthy, that is clickbait, hasn't quite lived up to it. So the idea of authentic storytelling, what does it mean to bring stories to people that are told through local eyes and from various perspectives? The nuances and the complexities of most of the social issues that all of you are tackling is something that you are very familiar with. You know that there's not just one solution out there that's going to fix everything. The nuances and understanding, the cultural, the geographic, the personal, the relationships, all of those nuances that make up social problems and social challenges and the global challenges that we have, they can't just be simplified into one straight answer, right? And we hope that by creating a plethora of stories that are told through a personal lens and character-driven stories, as well of the people that are looking to solve them, can help to inform a more complex view of the challenges and how they affect people, as well as the challenges that people have that are trying to solve them. Because if we learn from each other's challenges, we might, be much quicker in finding the kind of initiatives we want to support and we want to contribute to. And contribution is a really important aspect. The way you all go about solving your problems. If I ask you, how are you solving this problem? And if you take a minute, thinking about, what your answer might be, and maybe how that feels in your body when I say, how are you solving this problem? This is a big problem, versus what would it be like if I would ask you, how are you contributing? And starting from a place of, if I'm contributing, that means I will have to have canvassed who's already out there trying to solve the problem. I will have tried to understand how those initiatives and solutions have affected people in my community or the world, how they might have failed or what challenges they might have encountered. And I think in social change, in the industry, and in the reality that we all live in, being a supporting character is more important than reinventing the wheel. If we find the gaps, if we have the opportunity, the time, the intellect, the willingness, and the ambition to see what is already being tried, and how can I contribute to advancing the things that show potential, we will be setting ourselves up in a way where we can optimize solution-oriented initiatives with an understanding of collaboration and an understanding of our impact in the process of production. I'm going to open it up, for questions in a minute. You can tell I can talk about this forever. If I've learned something over the past 20 years working in this space, is that what is working? Two things, actually. One, initiatives that are investing in people, not just in things. One. Two, local leadership driving the direction of local development. All of you are those local leaders, and I couldn't be more hopeful for the future, seeing and learning about the work that all of you are doing and embarking on. Thank you. I hope our resources can be of service to you. I hope we can be of service to you. And I'm excited to see how your projects are progressing.
Thank you so much, Daniela, especially for all the resources that you've shared with us. We are truly grateful for all of that. And thank you for your initial remarks. They've given us a lot to think about. And I believe a lot of us have a few questions for you already. I'd love to jump into those. But before that, it's important that in social impact, we learn to work with communities and not for them, like you just mentioned in your speech. In your experience with storytelling, what should us young leaders who are driving this local change be mindful of that ensures that we're not sort of telling the community story for them, rather empowering them to tell their own stories? If you have any tips for us, because I'm sure a lot of our projects are going to be dependent on this skill of storytelling.
I think the job of a good story is to raise the question, not necessarily give the answer. The kind of storytelling that will have viewers turn to their neighbor and start a conversation around the issue will have greater impact than a story that in the last credit says, here is what you should do. Of course, if you're already working with organizations or with initiatives that you want to be a promotional platform for, you can always involve them in various ways, in giving them visibility, in sharing information about them, but don't be afraid to ask hard questions. The trustworthiness that you can build from a story to an audience is by allowing the audience to continue to think critically for themselves. And maybe that's easier said than done, but that, would be the difference between a dogmatic piece of promotional video content that focuses on one person's solution to a problem, to elaborating on the different views that community members have on how to solve something. And focusing on the questions would be my advice in the way that a story progresses, more so than the answers, if that's helpful.
That's incredibly helpful, and that does set us in the right direction and get the ball rolling for sure. Another question, a little more about your journey with Sima Academy. What are some surprising learnings that you came across during your time starting the Academy and starting your very own initiative?
With Sima Academy, some surprise, I get surprised every day, but initially it was surprising that a lot of educators told us, our students are going to love this, but we don't have the confidence to use media resources in the classroom. So we actually created a media literacy training initiative for educators because they're so used to teaching with texts and books. And, you think it's 2024, that's, an interesting remark, but, I was surprised to learn the amount of educators that lacked confidence in introducing media resources into their teaching. That was one surprise. And the other surprise is, the part of Sima Academy, we created a few lesson plans that are more action-based, skill-building initiative. We have one that is the SDG challenge, that is kind of the most popular one that we have, that is asking students and innovators and entrepreneurs to find out what they care about. Right? And if you already know what you care about, when you look at the SDGs and you have 7 categories to choose from, you find out which one is the one that really, like makes your fingertips burn. And then you engage with various types of films and resources about this topic that come from all different perspectives, which is this canvassing, which is the way that you can gather information and perspectives from various angles about that same topic. And then there's a guide on how to create an advocacy campaign. So that, for us, it's always what happens after the credits roll. Now you've been inspired by a Sima film. How can I take my inspiration and turn this into an advocacy project so that my school, community, or network can get on board, get inspired, get educated, and learn more? And we then have sort of almost gamified this, where young leaders or students create impact projects based on this lesson plan. They're then able to submit their impact to Sima Academy and win prizes, where it's speaking opportunities at Changemaker conferences, so that we can continue the sustainability of those impact projects. You're all invited, of course, to participate because you already have access to Sima Academy, as well as for educators, where educators who have utilized Sima Academy resources and have committed themselves to SDG education and global citizenship education can also submit their impact, and we send them on an educational development travel experience where it's cross-cultural education in real time, so that it's all vertically integrated. But most surprising is the creativity and just incredible projects that people come up with. It is, and it's someone who's worked in the development space for, I don't know, over 20 years now, I would never come up with initiatives like that, right? Where, be it, letter writing campaigns for people that are currently on trial against big pharma companies, to community gatherings, to podcasts and radio shows, to coalition building, to art projects, to intergenerational education projects where young people educate older people in their community. The lists go on and on. We have a couple of those impact stories that are also on the site. Basically, the most surprising in a positive way is the incredible inspiration that I continue to get, from people like all of you, who are just the future, and the hope of us actually being able to tackle a lot of the things that we ought to be tackling.
I honestly can't agree with you more. I was a fellow in the program last year, and this year I'm a campus director. But throughout this journey, the incredible projects and initiatives I've come across in interactions like this and otherwise on our various platforms and portals, it's incredible to see the kind of work that people my age, and the kind of projects and the kind of ideas that people come up with. It's wonderful. I honestly can't agree more. We do have a lot of participants here who want to ask you a lot of questions, and I think I'm going to open the floor up for a moderated conversation now. Question from the chat, and then come back to everyone who's raised their hands. I think alternating this would make sense. A question from the chat over here. I want to record and interview people who are experiencing homelessness as a part of my project, but I don't want to exploit them. How can I be sure I'm helping and not taking advantage of the community I'm trying to highlight? Any tips? This is Sarah from Pace University.
The fact that you're asking this question already tells me that you're the right person to ask this question and to go out and do this project. Am I doing the right thing? Am I exploiting someone by trying to highlight an issue? Am I doing this for them? Am I doing this for me? Am I doing this for the benefit of the project? As a storyteller, this is your loyal companion. This is your checks and balances that you'll carry with you throughout the process of storytelling, number one. So great that you're asking that question to begin with, because you'd be surprised a lot of people don't ask that question, number one. Number two, in your relationship and conversations with people that you interview, you always be 100% transparent about what you're using the media for. If you tell them, I'm going to put you on television, on broadcast television, if you tell them, I'm interviewing you so that we're going to win an Academy Award, obviously, you're not transparent. If you say, this is a research project, we are creating a film, whatever it might be, as transparent and truthful you can be about your intentions of using their voice and their story and their biography and their identity in the project that you're using, that is the respect, that's the moral integrity that we have as storytellers and journalists in the field. Not misrepresenting your intention and not making promises that you can't keep. A lot of storytellers in this field, by virtue of their good intentions, I just gave a lecture, yesterday that was called Good Intentions versus Good Impact. By virtue of all of our good intentions, we sometimes make promises. When this film is finished, I'm going to show it to you, and if you already know that you're not able to do that, don't make those promises. Be transparent and explain how their contribution is helpful to your project. I hope that helps.
That really does, and it does throw some light upon how important intention, transparency, and having a good conscience is throughout this journey. Shelton, I believe, has a question. Shelton's got his hand raised. You can go ahead, please. I'm so sorry, I still don't think we can hear you. I can come back to you in a minute if you'd prefer that. Okay, sounds good then. I'll take a question from the chat till then. What are the best skills that one needs to become a storyteller? Wow, this seems like an important question.
Be curious. It starts with curiosity. And again, if you think you have the answer already and you want to tell a story about your answer, your audience will feel it and you probably won't have that much fun in the process. Being curious to begin with, number one. Number two, films don't change anything. People do. The story is one element of a larger ecosystem that can help to create change. And so I typically advise storytellers, especially storytellers in the social impact space, think about how the process of production, of making your film, can be as responsible as the end result. The kind of relationships that you're creating on the journey of making a film are sometimes the most impactful for the project. The coalition that you're building of people meeting each other in the process of production, those sometimes are way more impactful than the impact campaign that follows. Be curious and make the process of production conscious and responsible, just like you want the end goal. And practice some self-care. In the process, it's not easy to make a film. It's not easy to tell a story. It's not supposed to be. It's not easy to work in the social impact space. It's not easy to have to be a visionary and have a sense of idealism to go out and do and start and participate on the journey, sometimes along the way, if we would have known what we're getting ourselves into, we might have not started it. So you have to have a little bit of this idealism and naivete, maybe even sometimes to begin with. And maybe here's another thing that is true for any social entrepreneur or innovator as much as the storyteller. You know, for me, the storytellers and social innovators or entrepreneurs or even aid workers or people working in international development, we all have the same responsibility, right? It's being conscious of our own impact in the process and allowing ourselves to fail. I think actually that might be, you know, the overarching quality of someone working in this space, because likely we're going to fail, but it's not how we fail is not what defines us. It's about how we're getting ourselves out of it. So being curious, making the process of production as responsible as the end goal, and allowing yourself to fail and then to stick with it and figure out how to do it better.
Thank you so much. I think that answers the question beautifully. I would like to move on to Abu Bakri. I believe they've got their hand up.
Thank you so much. Good day. I am Abu Bakri Mustafa from Nigeria, from Obafemi Awolowo University. My project is focusing on quality education, SDG 4. So this is a project where I intended to contribute to the reduction of teenage pregnancy in the community that I currently study. So I want to ask a question like, this project, I'm not just to carrying it out, but I want to make sure I provide a platform for its sustainability. So how, or what are the steps, what are the tips, what are the insights can you share with me, please, for me to be able to sustain this particular project?
Great project. I don't know what you've already done with the project, so I'm just gonna, you know, jump in, you know, with a tabula rasa, not really with information about what has been already created. First of all, I think you'll find a lot of resources on Sima Academy and stories of women and girls in terms of self-awareness, self-empowerment, that are going to be useful to you. That's one. The other is that in a type of impact project like this, and you are already investing in people, right? Which is, again, one of the points is how can I, by virtue of the women that I'm looking to serve, not only create something that is serving them in terms of resources, but that creates a culture of impact. And these are in terms of the different layers of intervention. You know, you might say, I want to change education around this issue. I want to change behavior around this issue. I want to change policy around this issue. I want to, you know, depending on the intervention, on where you want to be, thinking about how you can create something that allows you to work yourself out of the job. In behavior change, and that's the hardest to achieve, right? Because that takes the longest. How can I create something that solves the problem so that the issue doesn't need me anymore, right? With these thinking blocks to engage that one. You probably have a lot of organization, and we're working with a lot of organization in Nigeria, and particularly that are specifically focused on women. Leap Africa is an organization in Nigeria that is more focused on the gender equity gap when it comes to entrepreneurship, but the methodology there is to lead by example. So having female spokespeople that have gone through a transformation that can act as role models and mentors for women that still have a lot of questions and challenges in navigating this space, right? The way that you potentially have the opportunity to connect people and to create relationships that are going to exist beyond you being able to serve this project. I've seen initiatives in this space that have worked successfully in that type of way, creating relationships with other people, with other women that can be mentors and guiding a guiding resource and thought partners for this. I would love to learn more about the project. I would love to know what your initiative looks like. You know, maybe then in particular, you know, can comment on some things that might be short-term, medium-term, longer-term impact, where you can be strategic about what to begin with and what might develop out of the program itself. I hope that answered the question a little bit. Again, resources, films that have been made about this topic might be a good starting point to gather a community together, to show the film, to have a discussion, have a conversation, and learn about the attitudes and impressions and challenges that already exist around this issue by way of a film that's raising them.
Thank you so much, Daniela. I believe we had promised Shelton we'd come back to him. Shelton, do you think you could unmute yourself and try speaking to us now?
Yeah, are you getting me now?
Yes, great. So nice to hear you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again. Thank you to our speaker. I'm so inspired by our work because I'm the kind of person who's been working on the social impact initiative for a couple of years. I resigned from my job, and I'm so because my passion of doing something different from other people. So one of the key things she said, I really want to ask a question, is that what is your advice to a social impact-driven leader who is passionate about solving a specific problem, but do not have the resources to solve that problem, and the problem seems to be so big, but the person is so passionate. So as she has experience in working with other people or working with other initiatives, what is your advice? But before going further, I'm sorry to the audience. I'm Shelton. I'm from Liberia. I attend the African Medicine in Pittsburgh University. I work on SDG number 1 and number 8 that have to do with decent economic growth and their poverty reductions.
Thank you, Shelton.
Yeah.
What is so the question was the attributes of a leader who's passionate about a topic with limited resources, and how to get it done. In very short terms, collaboration is king. Partnerships, king. Personally, I like to surround myself with people that are smarter than me. What are the kind of things that I'm really curious and passionate about? And who are the people that know this 10 times better than I ever will? And how can I be a support system to them? The weight on a shoulder of a social impact leader is a lot. And eventually you start becoming responsible for the people that you're surrounding yourself with, right? The people that you start employing, the people that are, here's livelihoods that you're advancing, but not thinking that you have to have all the questions, but knowing how to find the people that can answer the question for someone else, I think is a quality that makes a good social impact leader. There's a lot of narcissism in our space. There's a lot of hero worshipping in our space. There's a lot of, I want to be the one solving the problem, and I want my name on this research paper, and I want the microphone when I go on stage, and I want to have my poster up, and all of this stuff. That's all great. And all of that comes anyway. But an attribute for a good social impact leader is an understanding that it's not about what you do or why you do it. It's about how you do it. And if that is your driving force, I think you'll be fine. It takes time. And again, requires a level of transparency. I think the fact that, again, you're asking yourself, how can I lead this with integrity, makes you the right person to lead this, number one. being transparent about your intentions and why this project came about will probably be a long way for individuals that might disagree with some of the resources that you're sharing to have an understanding of why you are putting them out there to begin with. The discourse that you're hoping to create, if I understand it right, is an extremely valuable and important one. And I think that the people that are going to be willing to participate in this discourse and being open and willing of sharing will probably have a level of forgiveness built in their own participation, hopefully. I wish I knew more about the intricacies of the project and kind of in what way a platform, I believe you've mentioned, that has to do with resources that you're creating. If you think about your own your own transparency in coming forward with your intentions about this and the way that you're sharing resources, maybe there's a way to build in a transparency for everyone involved that is participating in the conversation so that you learn where they're coming from. I think in conflict resolution, the willingness and openness is almost as if you have an agreement sometimes in open community forums of a certain a policy around the language that is being used, a criteria of how relationships and engagements are going to happen in this space. If it's a communication-based platform, obviously there's going to be a lot of monitoring. But I'd be interested in what you would want what is your goal? What is is it the discourse? Is it the conversation and the open end? Or do you have a specific goal in mind that has to do with, I mean, you tell me, is it cross-cultural, cross-traditional education coming together so that collaboration might happen in the future? Is it a resource information so that impressions and seeing the world in a different light? What is the goal? There is one of our lesson plans on Sima Academy is one that we created with an organization called Doha Debates, which is a debate format that is not about winning an argument, but it's about gathering a multiplicity of perspectives around an issue. In terms of conflict resolution, that has been quite successful in terms of unpacking certain traditions, right? Sort of traditional belief systems, sort of cultural specific information that I would encourage you to look at in terms of ways that communication strategies have actually been developed that are not about winning or being right, but that are opening up the space for communication to begin with. Another point is, and I'm sure you've been thinking about that, is an element of shame. For example, you know, in the way that we're distributing films to communities. Here's an example that I gave before: domestic abuse. That film about domestic abuse in northern India. We were not able to share this film in Dharamsala because our partner said, if we show this film there, some of the women are not going to be allowed to come. And we don't know if this is causing more harm than good. The film about domestic abuse in Colombia, we were able to share in Dharamsala. It was the concept was exactly the same, but the topic and the story was far enough away for the element of shame and introspection to not be right there, which allowed for a really fruitful conversation to happen. And if you look at, 16th, 17th century painting, any type of Orientalism where figures were allowed to be naked had to be the other, which is how it was able to be infused in Western culture, for example. Sometimes the resources and stories that have a little bit of distance to your own cultural capital and own cultural background are more helpful in igniting, enticing, and making a safe space for a conversation than some that are directly related to the experience of a local community. Maybe, again, I think there will also be resources that you're finding in Sima Academy about different cultures coming together and finding ways to have a conversation. And maybe, just maybe, this is a starting point to unpack some of the pre-established impressions of people from different ethnic groups coming together that have thought that they could not have conversations. But by creating a space that is safe, that is transparent, that is cognizant of how shame about certain predispositions or beliefs can hinder progress to happen, I think you'll be okay. Again, I hope that was helpful. I wish I had all of your projects files, so that I could see exactly what it is that you're working on, to be more specific. But hopefully, this large scale gives you a little bit of an insight.
No, all these answers that you're giving to us, they're really helping us out, and I'm sure, just like me, everyone sitting at home, you're just giving us so much more direction to take our projects to greater heights. Thank you so much for that. I'm just gonna pose one last question to you before we conclude the session. I feel like this is very relevant to a lot of our projects. The question that I've gotten from Wisdom is that if my project would require donations to execute like a project that attempts to contribute to alleviation of poverty, how can I reach out to organizations inclined to do the same work or vision for sponsorship or donation?
That is a great question. I think we all wish that our space wouldn't have as much competition as it has. The nonprofit sector, unfortunately, is not as vertically integrated and dialed in so that everyone that is having and executing good projects can share these types of resources. Having said that, if you're looking at reaching out to grant-making organizations, institutions that are making donations available for projects, there's tons of resources out there where you can find grant-making bodies that would contribute to a project that has your particular niche. It involves writing an application. It involves creating a budget. It involves having a plan. Some organizations want to see a short-term, medium-term, long-term. How is this project going to unfold in the next 5 to X years? Who are your partners? It really involves having kind of an X-ray of not only the work that you're doing now, but the work that you're planning to do in the future. And in many ways, again, the process of writing such an application is often useful in creating your own strategy and your own timeline in a way of how, to move this forward. That is one thing. The other thing is that there are many crowdfunding platforms out there at the moment, and writing a grant and waiting for an institution to support you is something that does take a lot of time. And I'm sure all of us, are ambitious and would like to start our project immediately. And for a lot of the startup financial needs, crowdfunding is often something that is beneficial. Meaning you start with your friends, your family, the people that they know, being able to tell them about your project, making sure they understand what your intentions are and how their contribution, however small, can help to create a larger project that will then end up benefiting your project, depending on what it is that you want to do. There is the traditional grant making space, there's the crowdfunding space, there is a partnership with institutions, educational institutions or corporate entities is an option. If you find a company that in their CSR, in their corporate social responsibility program, and I would start locally. Sometimes it might even be the is it the coffee shop or the restaurant around the corner that says, you know what, I'm going to have an in-kind contribution in some way. I'm going to allow you to use my space where you can have a meeting and get other people interested in what it is that you do. And from that, you know, to move forward to, is there a local company, an administrator, a bank, something where you can present your project and say, hey, this is what I want to do locally. You have an interest. It's about finding alignment in terms of their mission and their interest. You want to create economic stability in this region. Here's my project. Is there a way that we can work together? Is there a way that you have a department that has a philanthropic arm where you could start supporting me, for example? Is there a CSR program of a company? Here's a whatever it is, here's a local clothing. Again, it depends on your project, but do we find corporate, some type of institutional or educational institutions that share in our mission? And never be afraid to ask. The worst thing that can happen is they say no. And I've heard no my entire career, you know, but if we have no keeping us from, you know, doing the things we know are important and necessary to embark on, you know, none of us would be doing it. So don't take no for an answer. You'll be okay.
Thank you so much, Daniela. And on that note, I'd like to extend a vote of thanks to you. Thank you so much for taking out the time to be here, for being so patient with all our questions, and most importantly, for giving us access to Sima Academy. I'm sure all the fellows here and the ones who unfortunately couldn't join us for this session, they're incredibly grateful for this resource, and it's going to help us take our projects to another level, create the impact that we all want to. For our fellows who'd like to stay connected with you, would you be comfortable perhaps sharing any sort of means in which we can stay in touch with you in the chat box?
Absolutely. Please, you know, connect with me on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, reach out to Sima. You know, and all of the programs, I would love, you know, via Millennium Campus Network, and I'm such, you know, honored that they're able to, you know, be a part of it in this way, to just stay informed about how your projects are going. If any of you are interested also in being our local collaborators when it comes to local community screening series, you know, please, you know, reach out. We want to make sure, you know, we help to amplify the work that you already do with the resources that we have. And absolutely, we would love to stay connected and be a resource for you.
That sounds incredible. And I'm sure we have a lot of people here who are going to flood your inbox very soon with our projects. And we'd love to stay engaged with your incredible work. Again, thank you so much for every fellow who decided to join us here. Please keep an eye out on your inboxes. You're going to get invitations to upcoming webinars and instructions to access the Sima Academy platform. In the coming week, we have some excited sessions lined up for you guys as well. We've got Marcia Moll-Barron on Monday, Sam Vergard on Wednesday, and Cassie Rue on Friday. Thank you once again for everyone who could join us. Wishing you all a great rest of the day and looking forward to seeing you in the following sessions. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.